Captain Taehyun Park stood alone by the observation deck, watching stars blur past as the massive Confederation flagship Eternal Vigilance moved through space. His dark uniform made him look like any other officer, but everyone knew he was different. He was human. Still admiring the view, Captain Park? The voice belonged to Commander Shin, a tall, blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. I would have thought the novelty would wear off after 3 months aboard. Taehyun turned and gave a respectful nod. The stars never get old, Commander. Perhaps not for humans, Shin said. His upper eyes blinked in what Taehyun had learned was a sign of mild amusement. Your kind has only been traveling between them for what? A century. We Larak have been sailing the void for millennia. This was a conversation Taehyun had many times since joining the Galactic Confederation Navy as part of Earth's admission treaty. Humanity was the new kid in a very old neighborhood. The 17 alien species that formed the Confederation had been traveling the stars while humans were still figuring out how to make fire. The pilot briefing starts in 10 minutes, Shin said. Try not to be late this time. When Shin left, Taehyun let out a slow breath. Being the only human on a ship of 8,000 aliens wasn't easy. He was here as a symbol, proof that the Confederation was willing to give humans a chance. But symbols didn't get much respect. The briefing room was filled with pilots from 6 different species. The Larak, like Commander Shin, made up most of the group. Their 6-limbed bodies were perfect for handling complex flight controls. Next to them sat the Novan, gray-skinned humanoids with large eyes who could see spectrums of light no human could. They served as navigators. In the back, the crystalline Tamar stood perfectly still, their bodies occasionally catching the light and sending rainbows across the walls. They were weapons specialists, their multiple arms designed to operate gun systems. Taehyun took a seat in the back. A few pilots glanced his way, then quickly looked away. Attention, Commander Shin called out. The room went silent. Today's exercise. We'll test our response to a surprise attack. We will practice defensive pattern harmony. Taehyun raised his hand. Every eye in the room turned to him. Yes, Captain Park? Shin's voice had an edge to it. I've been studying our interceptor designs, Taehyun said. I believe with some simple modifications we could increase their combat effectiveness by 30%. A ripple of whispers spread through the room. Their current configuration focuses too much on long-range engagement, Taehyun continued. If we adjusted the thrusters and weapon systems for close combat. Close combat? Shin interrupted. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly. That's not how space battles are fought, Captain. Confederation doctrine has been refined over thousands of years. Capital ships engage at extreme distances. Interceptors provide defensive screens. This is the civilized way of warfare. But what if we face an enemy that doesn't follow the same rules? Taehyun asked. The room went silent again, this time with a different kind of tension. There are no such enemies, Shin said firmly. All spacefaring races understand the proper way to conduct warfare. Your species barely managed to reach your own moon before we found you. Perhaps observe our methods for another decade before suggesting improvements. Taehyun felt his face grow hot, but he kept his expression neutral. This wasn't the first time his ideas had been dismissed. 3 hours later, Taehyun sat in the cockpit of his interceptor. The ship was small compared to the massive Confederation vessels, but it was still larger than anything humans had built on their own. The controls were designed for multiple species to use, with adaptive interfaces that changed based on who was piloting. All pilots check in, came Shin's voice over the comms. One by one, the 30 pilots of Blue Squadron reported ready. Taehyun was last. Blue. 30 ready, he said. Remember, this is a standard exercise, Shin said. Follow the pattern exactly, as briefed. No deviations. The launch bay doors opened, revealing the blackness of space. One by one, the interceptors shot out, forming a perfect geometric pattern around the Eternal Vigilance and the 5 other capital ships participating in the exercise. Taehyun fell into position, his hands light on the controls. His interceptor responded smoothly, taking its place in the pattern. For all his frustrations with Confederation doctrine, he had to admit there was a beauty to their formations, mathematically perfect, like a dance among the stars. But something didn't feel right. The exercise area was supposed to be empty except for their fleet, but Taehyun's scanners picked up a faint reading at the edge of the system. "Command, this is Blue 30, he called out. "I'm detecting something at coordinates Mark 357. "Negative. Blue 30, came the response. "Sensors show all clear. Maintain formation." Taehyun frowned. He adjusted his scanner settings, focusing on the anomaly. There was definitely something there, hiding in the shadow of a small moon. Before he could report again, space itself seemed to tear open. Where there had been nothing, suddenly there were ships, strange vessels with sleek, predatory designs unlike anything in the Confederation fleet. They moved fast, much faster than should have been possible. "Unknown vessels," shouted Commander Shin. All ships formed defensive pattern harmony. The Confederation ships began their rehearsed maneuver, capital vessels moving into a hexagonal formation while interceptors formed protective screens. It was the same pattern they had practiced countless times, but the enemy ships didn't follow the rules. They didn't keep their distance or engage in the formal, long-range exchange of fire. That was proper space combat. Instead, they charged directly at the Confederation fleet, weapons firing at point-blank range. 3 Confederation capital ships exploded before they could even complete their defensive pattern. "Maintain formation." Shin's voice was tight with strain. "Follow doctrine." Taehyun watched in horror as another capital ship was hit, its hull cracking open. The enemy vessels, someone in the comm chatter called them Ravagers, were cutting through the Confederation fleet like it was made of paper. In that moment, Taehyun made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "I can't. Follow that order," he said, then switched off his comm. His hands flew over the controls, disabling safety protocols and command restrictions. His interceptor broke formation, accelerating at a speed that would have killed most non-human pilots. Taehyun aimed directly for the nearest Ravager ship, his mind racing with tactics human fighter pilots had used for centuries: diving attacks, evasive maneuvers, concepts that had never been applied to space combat because the Confederation had decided long ago that wasn't the proper way to fight. As his interceptor closed the distance, weapons hot and ready, Taehyun knew there was no going back. He was about to either die or show the Confederation a whole new way of fighting. And either way, nothing would ever be the same again. Taehyun's interceptor shot toward the enemy ship like a bullet. Behind him, the Confederation fleet was in chaos. Their perfect formations were breaking apart as the Ravager vessels tore through their defenses. "Park. Return to formation immediately." Commander Shin's voice crackled through the emergency channel. Even with his comm system mostly disabled, this signal got through. "With respect, sir, we're all going to die if we stick to the doctrine," Taehyun replied. He shut down the remaining comm channels and focused on the task ahead. The Ravager ship grew larger in his view screen. It was sleek and black, with weapons that glowed an eerie purple. Its design made no sense to Taehyun. It had no clear bridge, no obvious weapon placements like Confederation ships. It looked more like a living thing than a vessel. As he approached, the Ravager ship fired at him. Unlike the careful, long-range shots the Confederation used, these were wild, rapid bursts, but they all missed. The Ravagers weren't used to targets that moved so quickly or unpredictably. Taehyun smiled grimly. He was using flying techniques from Earth's history, moves that fighter pilots had used in air combat centuries ago. The Confederation had never applied such tactics to space because, in their view, space combat was about mathematics and precision, not instinct and aggression. He brought his interceptor in close, dangerously close, to the Ravager ship. So close that their larger weapons couldn't target him effectively. It was like a mouse running across the back of a cat. On the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, Lieutenant Myung Kang watched the tactical display with wide eyes. She was the only other human aboard, a communications specialist who had never spoken more than a few words to Taehyun. "What is he doing?" Commander Shin demanded. his four eyes fixed on the display showing Taehyun's interceptor dancing around the Ravager ship. He's using atmospheric combat techniques, Mi-young said quietly. In space. Impossible, Shin replied. Such maneuvers would tear his ship apart. But Taehyun's interceptor held together as he pushed it to its limits. The ship had been built with safety margins that its designers never expected anyone to actually use. Taehyun was using every bit of that margin now. He fired his weapons, small point defense lasers meant only for shooting down incoming missiles, directly at the Ravager ship's sensor arrays. One by one, the bulbous organs on the ship's surface burst in small explosions. He's blinding it, Mi-young whispered. The Ravager ship began to turn wildly, firing its weapons in all directions, trying to hit the small interceptor that was causing so much damage. But without its sensors, it was shooting blind. Taehyun wasn't done. He targeted what looked like external weapon mounts, firing precise shots that severed connections and caused secondary explosions. The Ravager ship was now wounded and flailing. Meanwhile, the rest of the Confederation fleet was still trying to form their defensive patterns, still being cut to pieces by the other Ravager vessels. Only Taehyun had found a way to fight back effectively. We need to help him, Mi-young said, turning to Commander Shin. Order the other interceptors to follow his lead. Shin's face showed a complex mix of emotions: shock, anger, and reluctant. Admiration. That would violate every combat doctrine we have followed for 3,000 years. Those doctrines are getting us killed today, Mi-young replied, her voice stronger now. Look at the tactical display. We've lost 5 capital ships. Park is the only one who's damaged an enemy vessel. A massive explosion rocked the Eternal Vigilance. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Hull breach on decks 12 through 15, reported a Novan officer. Shields at 23%. Commander Shin stood silent for a long moment, then made a decision that would also go down in history. All interceptors, he said into the fleet comm. Follow Blue 30's lead. Engage the enemy at close range. Target their sensors and weapon systems. Across the fleet, pilots looked at each other in confusion. This order violated everything they had been taught. But as they watched Taehyun's success on their tactical displays, one by one, they broke formation and followed his example. Back on his interceptor, Taehyun had a new problem. He had damaged the Ravager ship badly, but his weapons were depleted. The point defense lasers had overheated, and his missiles were gone. Yet the ship was still operational, still a threat to the fleet. Taehyun made another split-second decision. He plotted a collision course with what he believed was the Ravager ship's main power core, a pulsing section near the rear of the vessel. Computer, set autopilot to follow current course, he said. Prepare ejection system. The computer beeped in acknowledgement. Taehyun took one last look at his target, then pulled the ejection handle. The cockpit blasted free from the interceptor just as the main body of his ship continued on its collision course. Taehyun felt the shock wave as his interceptor slammed into the Ravager ship's power core, causing a chain reaction that tore the enemy vessel apart. His ejection pod tumbled through space, emergency systems blinking as they tried to stabilize. Through the small viewport, Taehyun saw other Confederation interceptors now engaging the remaining Ravager ships, copying his tactics. They were flying aggressively, targeting specific systems, staying too close for the enemy's main weapons to track them. A retrieval drone from the Eternal Vigilance locked onto his pod, pulling him back toward the flagship. As he approached, he saw the damage to the once pristine vessel. Whole sections were dark or exposed to space, but it was still fighting, still alive. When Taehyun's pod docked with the ship, he was surprised to find Commander Shin waiting for him, along with Lieutenant Mi-young Kang. Captain Park, Shin said formally. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep emotion among his species. Your actions were unorthodox. Taehyun stood at attention, prepared for the court-martial that would surely follow his disobedience. But, Shin continued, they were also effective. The fleet is reporting that your tactics, when adopted by the other pilots, have turned the tide of battle. 3 Ravager vessels have been destroyed, and the others are retreating. Myung stepped forward. You rewrote the rules of space combat in a single battle, she said, her eyes bright with admiration. The Confederation has never seen anything like it. Taehyun looked from Shin to Myung, suddenly aware that he had done more than just save the fleet today. He had challenged 3,000 years of tradition and proven it wrong. I just did what needed to be done, he said simply. What needed to be done? Shin repeated slowly, as if the concept was new to him. Yes, but I wonder if you understand what you have started here today. Before Taehyun could ask what he meant, an alarm sounded. The bridge called Commander Shin to an emergency meeting. The Ravagers have retreated for now, Shin told Taehyun, but I fear they will return, and when they do, nothing in the Confederation will be the same. As Shin hurried away, Myung stayed behind. The officers are already arguing about your tactics, she said quietly. Half of them want you promoted for saving the fleet. The other half want you punished for breaking doctrine. She paused. You've started something big, Taehyun. Really big. Taehyun looked out a nearby viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Ravagers were regrouping. And here, the Confederation was facing a challenge to its most basic beliefs. One human pilot had changed everything, and this was just the beginning. 1 week after the battle, Taehyun sat in his quarters aboard the Eternal Vigilance. The ship was docked at Central Station, the massive space structure that served as the Confederation's military headquarters. Repair crews worked day and night to fix the damage from the Ravager attack. Taehyun had not been allowed to leave his quarters. He wasn't under arrest exactly, but Commander Shin had told him to stay put until the situation is resolved. The situation, as far as Taehyun could tell, was the huge argument his actions had started throughout the Confederation. The door chimed. Enter, Taehyun called. Myung stepped in, carrying a datapad. You've become famous, she said with a small smile, or infamous depending on who you ask. She handed him the pad. On it was a news report showing protests on a Tamar world. The crystalline aliens held signs with Taehyun's name crossed out. They're calling for you to be punished, Myung explained. The Tamar build their entire fleet around long-range combat. Your tactics make their ships almost useless. Taehyun sighed. I was just trying to save lives. I know, Myung said, sitting down across from him. But you've done more than that. You've challenged how things have been done for thousands of years. Some species see that as a threat. The door chimed again. This time, when it opened, a human woman in an admiral's uniform stepped in. Both Taehyun and Myung jumped to their feet and saluted. At ease, said Admiral Yunha Lee. She was the highest-ranking human in the Confederation Navy, appointed after Earth joined the interstellar community. Admiral Lee looked at Myung. Lieutenant Kang, I need to speak with Captain Park alone. Myung nodded and left quickly. When the door closed, Admiral Lee turned to Taehyun with a serious face. Do you understand what you've done, Captain Park? She asked. Taehyun stood straighter. I engaged the enemy using tactics that proved effective, Admiral. You did much more than that, Lee said. She walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. You've shown them that their entire approach to warfare is fundamentally flawed. There are 17 species whose military doctrine, technological, development, and even cultural identity are built around how they fight in space, and you just proved it all wrong. Taehyun felt cold suddenly. He hadn't thought about it that way. The Confederation Council has been in emergency session for 5 days, Lee continued. The Tamar Imperium has formally protested humanity's continued presence in the Confederation. Their entire fleet design is now obsolete because of what you showed everyone. The Lyric Confederacy has recalled their ambassadors, she added. Their whole social system is based on their role in traditional fleet formations. Your tactics make those formations pointless. I was just trying to survive, Taehyun said quietly. We were losing the battle. Admiral Lee turned back to him, her expression softening slightly. I know, and you saved many lives that day. But actions have consequences, especially when they challenge the status quo. What's going to happen now? Taehyun asked. That's why I'm here, Lee said. The council has reached a compromise. You won't be punished. In fact, you're being promoted. Taehyun blinked in surprise. Promoted? To Major, Lee said. And you're being given a new assignment. You're going to train pilots in what they're now calling human-style combat techniques. That's not what I expected, Taehyun admitted. The practical minds in the Confederation recognize that your tactics work, Lee explained. And with the Ravagers now a known threat, they need effective ways to fight. But make no mistake, there are many who see you and what you represent as dangerous. Who will I be training? Taehyun asked. A mixed group. Some humans from Earth who are being fast-tracked into service and aliens who are willing to learn the new methods. She handed him a data chip. Your new orders. You start tomorrow. The training facility was a large section of Central Station that had been quickly converted for Taehyun's program. It contained flight simulators, tactical displays, and a briefing area. Taehyun arrived early on the first day, surprised to find Myung already there. Lieutenant Kang? He asked. What are you doing here? She smiled. I've been assigned to your team. Communications and tactical support. Before Taehyun could respond, the doors opened and his students began to arrive. There were 15 of them, 10 humans fresh from Earth and 5 aliens, 2 Novan navigators, a Larak pilot, and surprisingly, 2 Tamar gunners. Welcome, Taehyun said when they had all gathered. I'm Major Park. What we're going to learn here goes against everything the Confederation has taught about space combat for the past 3,000 years. It won't be easy, especially for those of you from Confederation worlds. One of the Tamar stepped forward. Unlike most of their kind, who were smooth and elegant, this one had rough edges and an unusual color pattern. I am Kel, the Tamar said in a voice like chimes. My lineage built weapons for 30 generations. When I saw the recording of your battle, I knew everything we had created was wrong. I am here to learn the truth. The Larak pilot, much younger than Commander Shin, nodded in agreement. The old ways failed against the Ravagers. We must adapt or die. Taehyun felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Maybe this wouldn't be as hard as he feared. Over the next month, Taehyun worked with his students day and night. They practiced in simulators, studied Earth's history of aerial combat, and developed new tactics for space battles. The human pilots had an advantage with their instinctive understanding of the aggressive close-range approach. But the aliens brought their own strengths: the Novans' enhanced perception, the Larak's natural coordination, and the Tamar's deep knowledge of weapon systems. Myung proved invaluable, helping the different species communicate effectively and developing new command protocols that worked with the faster pace of human-style combat. By the end of the month, they had formed the first experimental squadron of its kind in Confederation history. Admiral Lee came to observe their final training exercise. Impressive, she said after watching the squadron demolish a simulated Ravager fleet with minimal losses. The Council will want to see this. Are things getting any better politically? Taehyun asked her privately. Lee's expression darkened. Worse, I'm afraid. The Tamar have withdrawn from 3 joint defense pacts. The Larak are refusing to share star charts with non-Larak ships. And we've received reports that some member species are secretly meeting with Ravager representatives. What? Taehyun was shocked. They would ally with the enemy? Some see humans as the greater threat now, Lee explained. You've changed everything, Major Park. The old balance of power is falling apart. And when power shifts... She didn't need to finish the thought. That night, Taehyun couldn't sleep. He stood at the viewport in his new quarters, looking out at the docked ships. Most were still built in the old style, massive, elegant vessels designed for long-range combat. But one ship caught his eye. It was smaller, with a sleek design, unlike the others. That's the HSS Defiance, Myung said, coming to stand beside him. They had grown closer during the training program, their shared human perspective creating a bond in this alien environment. Human spaceship? Taehyun asked, recognizing the prefix. Myung nodded. The first Confederation vessel designed around human combat principles. They've been building it in secret for the past month, and guess who's going to command it? Taehyun looked at her, surprised. Me? Admiral Lee told me to give you this, she said, handing him a data chip. Your new orders, effective immediately. You're to take command of the Defiance and your squadron. We'll be assigned to it. Taehyun took the chip slowly, feeling the weight of what it represented. This is really happening, isn't it? Everything is changing because of what I did. The galaxy was stuck in old ways that didn't work anymore, Myung said. Change was coming one way or another. You just started it sooner. As they stood there, looking at the new ship, an emergency alarm sounded throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Taehyun's comm unit beeped. Major Park, report to command immediately, came Admiral Lee's voice, tense and urgent. What's happening? He asked as he and Myung hurried toward the command center. Long-range sensors have detected a large fleet approaching, Lee replied. It's the Ravagers, and they're not alone. We're picking up Tamar and Larak ship signatures with them. Taehyun felt his blood run cold. It was as Lee had feared. The divide he had created in the Confederation had led some species to side with the enemy rather than accept change. How much time do we have? He asked. They'll be here in 12 hours, Lee said grimly. Major Park, your command just became active. Get to your ship. The Defiance will lead our defense. As Taehyun and Myung ran toward the docking bay, he realized that his single act of survival had set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. One human pilot had indeed rewritten the rules of space combat, and now he had started a war. The HSS Defiance was unlike any ship Taehyun had ever seen. From the outside, it looked small compared to traditional Confederation vessels. But inside, it was packed with innovations inspired by his combat style. Major Park, welcome aboard, said the ship's chief engineer, a human named Jiwoo. She led Taehyun and Myung through corridors filled with busy crew members. We've built her with everything you showed us works. Quick engines, close-range weapons, and enhanced maneuverability. The bridge was compact, designed for fast decision-making rather than the ceremonial command centers of other Confederation ships. Screens showed the space around Central Station where dozens of vessels were preparing for the coming battle. How many ships do we have? Taehyun asked. Admiral Lee's face appeared on the main screen. 73 vessels have declared. For us, she said. About half the fleet. The others are either sitting this out or... She didn't need to finish. They all knew some Confederation ships had joined the Ravagers. The enemy fleet will arrive in 10 hours, Lee continued. Your squadron is ready, Major. The Defiance will lead our interceptor forces. I'll command the capital ships from the Nova Dawn. Taehyun nodded. What are our orders? Survive, Lee said simply. And win. Because if we lose this battle, Earth will be next. 9 hours later, Taehyun stood before the pilots of his squadron in the Defiance's briefing room. There were now 30 of them. His original 15 trainees plus 15 more who had volunteered after seeing the results of his training program. This won't be a simulation, he told them. The enemy fleet outnumbers us. They have Ravager ships plus vessels from the Tamar, Larak, and 3 other Confederation species that have turned against us. They know our traditional tactics, but they've never faced what we can do. He brought up a tactical display showing their battle plan. We'll operate in 5 ship teams. Each team has a specific target. You'll hit their sensors, weapons, and engines just like we practiced. Don't try to destroy them, just blind them and make them unable to fight. The young Larak pilot raised a hand. What about our people fighting on their side? Do we fire on our own kind? It was a difficult question that Taehyun had been wrestling with. Try to disable, not destroy, he said finally. Remember, they're victims of fear. They think we're changing too much, too fast. And aren't we? Asked one of the human pilots. Taehyun looked at each face in the room. Maybe. But change was coming whether they wanted it or not. The Ravagers don't follow the old rules. If we kept fighting the old way, we'd all be dead. Myung stepped forward. We've created new communication protocols so the enemy can't predict our movements, she explained. Each team will use a different frequency, changing every 3 minutes. The codes are in your combat computers. An alarm sounded. Admiral Lee's voice came over the ship-wide comm. All vessels, battle stations. Enemy fleet has accelerated. Arrival. In 30 minutes, the pilots rushed to their interceptors. Taehyun and Myung headed for the bridge. When they arrived, the main screen showed the approaching enemy fleet. Over 100 ships, including the sleek black Ravager vessels and the more familiar shapes of Confederation ships that had joined them. All systems ready, reported Jiwoo from her engineering station. The Defiance can take more stress than any ship in the fleet. Good, Taehyun said, taking the captain's chair. Because we're going to push her to the limit. Myung took the communication station. All squadron leaders report ready. The minutes ticked by. On the tactical display, Taehyun could see Admiral Lee's capital ships forming a defensive line. But unlike the old Confederation patterns, they were positioned to support the new interceptor tactics, creating fire zones that the faster ships could use for cover. Enemy fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel, announced the sensor. Officer. Space seemed to ripple as the combined Ravager separatist fleet appeared. Their formation was a mix of styles, the Ravagers in their chaotic pattern, the Confederation separatists trying to maintain their traditional formations. They don't work well together, Taehyun noted. We can use that. Admiral Lee's voice came through. All ships, engage according to plan. Major Park, launch your squadrons. All interceptors, launch, Taehyun ordered. Execute combat plan Thunderbolt. Across the fleet interceptors shot from their launch bays. Human pilots and their alien allies who had embraced the new tactics. Taehyun watched them form into their 5-ship teams, each heading for a designated target. Take us in, he ordered. The Defiance moved forward, its engines pushing it faster than a traditional Confederation vessel could go. Target the lead. Ravager ship. Fire when in range. The battle erupted around them. Energy beams and missiles crossed the vacuum of space. Explosions bloomed silently. The old and new ways of fighting collided in a chaotic dance of destruction. On the tactical display, Taehyun saw his interceptor teams hitting their targets with precision. Just as they had trained, they went for sensors, weapons, and engines. One by one, enemy ships began to drift, unable to fight effectively. But the battle was far from one-sided. Several of their interceptors disappeared from the display, destroyed by enemy fire. A Confederation capital ship broke apart under concentrated Ravager attack. We're taking heavy fire, Jiwoo reported as the Defiance shook. Shields at 60%. Evasive pattern delta, Taehyun ordered. Bring us around for another pass. Myung's voice cut through the chaos. Admiral Lee's ship is under attack. 3 Ravager vessels are concentrating fire on the Nova Dawn. Taehyun made a split-second decision. Change course, all weapons, target those Ravager ships, get us between them and the Nova Dawn. The Defiance swung around, its engines straining as it accelerated toward the heart of the battle. The ship shuddered as enemy fire hit their shields, but they pressed on. Shields at 40%, 30%, Jiwoo called out. Hold course, Taehyun said firmly. Fire all weapons. The Defiance unleashed everything it had. Their new weapons, designed for close combat, tore into the nearest Ravager ship. Its hull cracked open, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. 1 down, Myung reported. 2 more still attacking the Admiral's ship. Squadron 3, support, us, Taehyun ordered into the comm. 5 interceptors broke from their assigned targets and raced to join the Defiance. Together they engaged the remaining Ravager ships. The battle raged for hours. Both sides took heavy losses. But slowly the tide began to turn. The combined tactics, capital ships providing covering fire while interceptors disabled enemy vessels at close range, proved effective against both the Ravagers and the Separatist Confederation ships. Enemy fleet is breaking formation, Myung announced finally. They're retreating. The bridge crew cheered as the tactical display showed Ravager and Separatist ships jumping to faster-than-light travel, abandoning the battlefield. Admiral Lee's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but triumphant. Well done, Major Park, your tactics have won the day. What's our status? Taehyun asked. We've lost 17 ships, Lee replied. About a third of our interceptors, but we've destroyed or disabled twice that number of enemy vessels. It's a victory. But not the end, Taehyun said. looking at the retreating enemy signatures on the display. No, Lee agreed. This was just the first battle of what will be a long war. The Confederation as we knew it is gone. Now we fight for its future. And Earth's. Later, as repair crews worked to fix battle damage, Tae-hyun and Mi-young stood in the Defiance's observation lounge looking out at the stars. I never meant for this to happen, Tae-hyun said quietly. All those ships lost. All those lives. You can't blame yourself, Mi-young told him. The Ravagers would have destroyed us all if you hadn't shown us a new way to fight. Yes, it caused upheaval, but sometimes that's necessary. Tae-hyun thought about everything that had happened since that first battle when he broke formation. One decision, made in a moment of desperation, had changed the course of galactic history. When Earth joined the Confederation, everyone thought we would learn from them, Mi-young said, echoing his thoughts. No one expected we'd end up teaching the galaxy how to fight. I just hope we're teaching them the right lessons, Tae-hyun replied. There's more to humanity than combat tactics. Admiral Lee joined them, carrying a data pad. I've been authorized to establish a new command, she told them. The Unified Defense Force. Humans and aliens who believe in adapting to meet new threats. I want you both as part of my staff. The war is just beginning, she continued. The Separatists and Ravagers will regroup. We need to be ready, and we need to show the galaxy that human innovation isn't just about better ways to fight. It's about finding better solutions to problems. Tae-hyun looked back at the stars. Somewhere out there, the enemy was planning their next move. The easy certainties of the old Confederation were gone forever, replaced by a future full of danger and possibility. One human pilot had rewritten the rules of space combat. Now humanity would help write the next chapter of galactic history, for better or worse. I'm in, he said simply. The stars seemed brighter somehow, like a new dawn breaking across the cosmos. The storm had broken, and when it cleared, the galaxy would never be the same again.